In Episode 1, Crack the PCIP exam with clarity and confidence, we begin by slowing the pulse and setting a steady rhythm for study and test day. The goal is not to memorize 1,000 facts, but to learn a small set of repeatable moves that turn any question into a structured decision. You will hear a calm promise today. If you can map what you read to scope, control, evidence, and validation, you can navigate even the messiest stems without guessing wildly. Clarity comes from knowing what matters first and what can wait, and confidence grows when every question is handled with the same measured approach. Think of this as learning the exam's choreography rather than improvising under pressure. With a dependable sequence and plain language, you can convert noise into signals, pause when needed, and make choices you trust. The next shift is translating domain language into short, testable tasks that you can speak out loud before practice. When a domain mentions scoping, turn it into a sentence you can say. Name the system boundaries, data flows, and cardholder data locations that put a component in scope. When a domain mentions access control, render it as state who approves, what is provisioned, how it is documented, and which log shows it happened. Spoken lines force clarity because your ear hears gaps your eyes miss. This habit also builds a script for test day. When a question lands, you can quietly run the same spoken checks in your head and hear whether an answer aligns with a real control. Plain, testable tasks keep your focus on what is verifiable, not what sounds clever. Reading technique is where many candidates unlock the exam. Start with the stem before peeking at the options, because the stem tells you the job to be done. After you grasp the job, glance at the answers to see the range of direction. Then swing back to definitions from the payment card industry data security standard and its intent. That anchor is your north. When you judge the choices, you are not picking what you like. You are matching the stem's job to the standard's meaning, scope, assumptions, and the kind of evidence that would prove adequacy. This loop prevents you from getting hypnotized by a technically possible but off-scope fix. It also saves time because you avoid rereading as a way to reduce anxiety. Stem, sample the options, anchor on definitions, then decide. Eliminating distractors is easier when you favor feasibility, evidence, and the continuous process intent of PCIDSS. A tempting answer that demands a massive redesign with no transitional control usually fails feasibility and ignores how the standard prefers ongoing, repeatable processes. Another flashy option that cannot be proven with logs, approvals, reports, or configurations is just theater. When stuck between two, ask which choice produces a durable control with a visible artifact and aligns to the requirement's intent over time. Distractors often promise instant perfection or rely on ad hoc heroics. The better answer fits into a managed process, creates a trail, and survives an assessor sample. That frame lets you cross out noise quickly and keep moving. Good timing protects sound judgment, so build a plan with block targets and tiny checkpoints. Decide how many questions you want finished by the 30-minute mark, the halfway point, and the last quarter, leaving a buffer for review. Use micro checkpoints every 10 questions to see whether you are ahead or behind and adjust without drama. If a scenario is sticky, park it after your preset minute and return later with fresh eyes. The plan is your cardiogram for the session. It smooths spikes and keeps panic from widening simple decisions. When you practice with these blocks, you teach your nervous system that progress is normal and recoverable. That way, time becomes a friend that nudges rather than a siren that alarms. As you work, a tiny checklist keeps you from leaping at the first plausible option. Scope, control, evidence, validation. Scope asks what assets, data, and connections are in play, and whether the question setting is merchant, service provider, or a blended environment. Control asks which requirement or process addresses the risk in that space. Evidence asks what artifact proves the control is real, a policy, a ticket, a configuration, a log, or a report. Validation asks how an assessor would confirm it consistently works, sampling, dates, sign-offs, frequency, and segregation of duties. Whisper those 4 words to yourself, run the loop, and watch how many trick answers fall away. The checklist slows impulsive choices and produces repeatable wins. Let's walk a tricky scenario to see the anchors at work. A stem describes a service provider hosting multiple clients, reporting that administrators can access all client environments and asking for the best next action to reduce risk while preserving operations. One answer suggests immediate full network segmentation with no transitional steps. Another proposes a quarterly review of admin access lists. A third recommends role-based access aligned to least privilege with per-client approval and logging. And a fourth talks about encrypting backups at rest. Run scope first. Service provider, multi-tenant, cross-environment risk. Control next. Access provisioning and authorization boundaries. Evidence, approvals per client, role definitions, and logs of use. Validation, sampling admin requests and reviewing logs for inappropriate cross-access. The role-based answer with approvals and logging fits feasibility, creates artifacts, and aligns with the ongoing process intent, which makes it the best choice. Confidence often falters not for lack of knowledge, but because the body gets loud. Build a short reset routine you can use between hard items. One breath in through the nose, longer breath out through the mouth, a small posture lift to open your chest, and one sentence that grounds your decisions. The sentence is your mantra. Something like, scope first, then evidence. It is not a pep talk, and it is not a demand. It reminds your brain which move comes next, and signals that you are running a process, not wrestling a monster. A routine like this takes seconds, lowers noise, and returns you to your sequence with composure. The exam rewards calm more than speed. Another protective habit is the commitment to move on when you are stuck, preserving time for solvable questions. Decide in advance that after your application minute, you will choose the best fit and flag the item. This is not defeat, it is resource allocation. Many candidates lose points by drowning in a single stem while easy marks sit untouched later. When you practice committing and moving, you train away the illusion that more time equals a better answer. Often, your first structured pass is as good as it gets, and a second look at the end will benefit from distance and the pattern exposure you gained across the set. Protect your future self by honoring the clock now. Preparation should taper in the final 72 hours for better retention and a steadier mind. 2 days out, run light review sessions focusing on your spoken tasks and the checklist, not on brand new material. Mix in short, targeted drills on the heaviest domains, then stop while you still feel sharp. The day before, reduce to brief rehearsals of stems and definition anchors, take a slow walk, and get real sleep. Morning of, skim a tiny card with your reading sequence, your word cues for absolutes and vague terms, and your confidence sentence. Tapering is not laziness, it is strategic consolidation. You arrive clearer, with fresher eyes, and a body that is ready to sit and think without friction. As you integrate these moves, notice how they form a decision system rather than scattered tips. You read the stem first, peek at the answers, and anchor on definitions. You watch language for signals, classify the thinking mode, and allocate time accordingly. You eliminate options that fail feasibility, lack evidence, or ignore continuous process intent. You run the scope, control, evidence, validation loop before committing, then you move on when appropriate. Practice together, these steps transform the exam into a series of predictable tasks. Confidence follows predictability. When your brain trusts the path, it spends less energy fighting panic and more energy mapping each question to what can actually be proven in the real world. It helps to rehearse how your assessor's lens changes what looks attractive. A dazzling technology fix without a traceable approval and no monitoring rarely beats a simpler control that generates logs, tickets, and clear sampling points. The payment card industry data security standard is about managed, repeatable processes that reduce risk in scope, not about one-time heroics. Answers that create artifacts a reviewer can inspect tend to be safer than answers that rely on future vigilance with no structure. When two options feel close, ask which one a diligent assessor could verify without guessing intent. That question pulls you toward controls with evidence trails and away from slogans. It also builds muscle memory for real work beyond the exam. Build your study blocks to mirror the exam's weight and your pacing rules. Start a session with 5 quick recall drills to warm up your definition anchors. Shift to 8 comprehension items where you paraphrase the core idea in your own words before choosing. Finish with 4 application scenarios and run the full checklist on each. Keep each block short, then pause, stretch, and note where your attention drifted. This rhythm teaches both content and conditions. You practice knowledge, and you practice sitting, breathing, and deciding under a clock. Consistency beats marathons. Many small, well-run blocks with reflection will prepare you better than a single long slog that leaves you tired and brittle. Feedback loops accelerate improvement, so capture a tiny post-block note each time. What tripped you? Unclear scope, fuzzy control selection, weak evidence mapping, or missing validation? Write one sentence about the exact move you will tighten next block. Treat misses as data, not identity. If absolutes are luring you, add a pre-block reminder card for the words that tend to mislead. If vague qualifiers keep slipping by, tape a line above your screen that reads, "Name the artifact." This is quiet craftsmanship. Over a week, those small nudges become automatic, and your reading voice starts to sound like a calm reviewer rather than a harried test taker. That voice is the secret engine of confidence. When you review answers after a practice set, narrate your reasoning as if you are explaining it to a new teammate. Say what the STEM demanded, what the standards definition requires, why the wrong options fail feasibility or proof, and which artifact the correct answer would produce. Speaking your chain of thought forces clarity and reveals any leaps you took without basis. It also trains you to hear the difference between a general claim and a verifiable control. The exam is full of options that sound good until you ask, where is the evidence and who would validate it? Make that question the hinge of your review habit. Over time, it reduces careless errors and cements the evaluator mindset. Now bring the pieces together with a brief capstone walkthrough. Imagine an item about network monitoring where a merchant relies on manual checks once a month. Options include buying an expensive new platform, performing daily manual checks, implementing centralized logging with alerts tied to policy and reviewed regularly, or outsourcing monitoring without defined reports. Run your loop. Scope: in-scope networks with cardholder data. Control: monitoring and logging sufficient to detect and respond. Evidence: alert configurations, logged events, review reports, timestamps, and sign-offs. Validation: sampling logs, checking alert thresholds, and verifying review cadence. The centralized logging with defined alerts and regular reviews wins because it is feasible, creates artifacts, and reflects continuous management. The pattern holds and confidence grows. All of this will serve you only if you protect your state during the exam, so keep that micro-routine ready. One steady breath, a small posture lift, and a single anchoring line bring you back to the steps. Treat time as a partner rather than a critic. Your plan allocates minutes based on the thinking mode, and your checkpoints keep you honest without drama. When you flag and move on, you are keeping a promise to your future self, who will return with broader pattern exposure and lower adrenaline. The tone you set with yourself matters as much as the technique. Calm is not a mood, it is a practice supported by structure. To lock everything in, finish today by summarizing your decision system aloud, then run 5 rehearsal questions immediately. For each one, announce the STEM's job, sample the options, speak the definition that applies, and note any absolute or vague term that needs translation. Classify the item type, spend the right amount of time, apply feasibility and evidence as your filter, and run scope, control, evidence, validation before committing. Do the breath and sentence when you feel pressure spike, then move on. This short rehearsal is not about score. It is about forming grooves your brain will follow under stress. The grooves you lay now will be there on test day. We will close where we started, with a calm promise and a simple path. You have a choreography for the PCIP exam that respects the blueprint, favors verifiable controls, and turns language into reliable signals. You know how to read, how to pace, how to eliminate, and how to reset your mind in seconds. You have a taper plan for the final 72 hours that sharpens rather than exhausts. Most of all, you have a small checklist that keeps every decision grounded in scope, control, evidence, and validation. Keep practicing those moves in short, focused blocks and use a 5-question rehearsal as your daily check-in. Clarity and confidence are not accidents. They are built one deliberate decision at a time. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.